Okay, Sheikh, an issue that is causing our youth to be divided is on the subject of LGBTQ. On one hand, while the act and lifestyle is not permissible in Islam, but some Muslim youth feel the need to advocate for them as a persecuted minority, whether it is in financially supporting their organizations or the very least getting the word out of their grievances on their social media platforms in the spirit of wokeness. And I know you talked a lot about this, Sheikh, in your videos, but how do we thread this fine line?
I think the main thing is that we have to converse with the world around us with the framework that Islam gives to us. And so there's a moral framework that we have that is based on the idea of being ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of being owned by Allah and being subject to His divine commands. And also that happiness comes to us when we submit ourselves to what He commands us to do, and we avoid the things that He prohibits us from doing. You know, I think of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. You mentioned advocating. Unsur akhaka zaliman wa madlum. Support your brother, whether he is wronged or wronging. You don't support someone in their wrong, courses of action or in lifestyle choices that are contrary to the fitrah, that are contrary to our natural inclinations and contrary to our faith. Instead, you help people find that their happiness and fulfillment, no matter what their circumstances are going to be in submitting their desires to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and finding their way back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I think that in the world that we're living in, we're being told that we're backwards because we hold to a consistent set of values that doesn't change every 5 years. So while the world is in rapid change, constantly and subjective with its morality, as Muslims, we have a very consistent and constant set of what a moral human being is and what a moral lifestyle is. And we have to insist upon that. And we can't be told that we are hateful and we're backwards because we hold on to an unchanging set of values. And those that hate us for that unchanging set of values and our articulation of it and our living by it are indeed the ones who are acting from a space of bigotry and from a space of hatred. So I think it's important for us when we are confronted with these challenges to speak about everything from the framework of Tawheed, from the framework of Allah, our one God, and our submission to Him. And so especially when it comes to some of the recent incidents and happenings here as well in Malaysia that I came to know about with the LGBT issue, this is being used as an issue to really undermine the Muslim world and to divide people, to disrespect and disregard anything that doesn't match this new changing set of values, which again changes all the time and continues to sort of portray and capture the Muslim world in the spirit of backwardness that can never be deemed as any type of authority in the world or any type of leader in the world in any space because their insistence on backwardness. And instead we say we adhere to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're proud of that. And we take pride in being servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in abiding by His set of commands. And that's where we find our fulfillment, and that's how we choose to live our lifestyles. And that is the basis by which we operate in every way in our existence.
As a follow-up to that question, Sheikh, what about those who are struggling with their identity as a Muslim and as someone who is also having LGBTQ inclinations, for example?
I think that there's an important distinction that's to be made here, and this is something that we often will speak to our youth about, and especially, differentiating between the political and the pastoral, if you will, when you're trying to help someone that comes forth that says, look, I have these feelings, I have these desires, whether it was something that happened, because of the environment around me or because of the things that I consume in terms of media or whatever it is, right? Or it's something that I feel like I had my entire life. In Islam, we define ourselves by our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Islam. And those that submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ, and they prohibit themselves from their desires. إِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ, then paradise is their way. And so it's important to speak differently to the political movement, the LGBT movement, and what havoc that is wreaking, in terms of the Muslim world and even for Muslims that are living as minorities in the West. And the young Muslim that feels like they're a terrible person and they have no path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of something that they're struggling with in their desires. No, rather they have not just a path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have a means by which they can achieve, wilaya. They can become friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by struggling against their desires, seeking His favor, seeking His pleasure. And they're no less than any other Muslim So long as they remain Muslim and they identify as Muslim and they work to be the best Muslims, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will treat them as such, and we should do so as well.